One glamping upgrade I hope to make soon is to build some sort of shoe cubby. I don't want to bring my muddy shoes into the tent, but if I'm not careful, they get rained on and snowed on. I knew this would happen eventually. Last night somebody got into the trash and had themselves a little feast. I actually heard them. They woke me up, but by the time I got the tent unzipped, they had bolted away, so I don't know exactly who was in there. Somebody was. So the next step in diagnosing this Yamaha golf cart is just to do some continuity checks and resistance checks and see if we can find where the breakdown of flow is of current. So here we've got the forward and reverse switch. I'm getting conductivity there and conductivity there, which is good. If I throw the switch in the other position, then I no longer get conductivity between here and here. Instead, I get it between the top and the bottom. So that's all good. That's what's supposed to happen. If you study the circuit diagrams, this switching of things around is a clever way to switch the flow of the current through the field coil. Now, what could we check next? There is a switch here. So normally I think there over here is a key for starting it, but somebody has removed the key and just put in a switch. I don't know what that switch goes to, but let's see if it works. So I got a little beep there, so that works. And if I flip the switch in the other direction, nothing. So you can see the switch does work. It goes both off and on. So let's look at some other interesting things. So next I want to check the resistance across the solenoid. This cart only has one solenoid as opposed to the 5 we had on the other one. So I'm going to check across these are the low current terminals. These are the ones that actually cause the solenoid to move. And what do we got here? I'm seeing 5 mega ohms of resistance. That doesn't sound good. I should be seeing like 50 ohms. So that is awfully suspect. I pulled this solenoid out of the system so I could test it in isolation. Based on how clean it is, we can tell it's definitely not the original one from what I believe is 1991 or 92 is when this cart was made. I tested across these terminals here, which should have about 50 ohms of resistance, and they had infinite resistance. And then I was going to consider applying 36 volts across it just to see if it would click at all, but then I noticed this. It's a 12 volt solenoid, so there's no mystery there about why this solenoid failed. I'm sure it worked for a little bit, but quickly burnt out with 36 volts being run across it, both in this direction and that direction. The next step is for me to go through all this and make sure that all the wiring is hooked up correctly. I know for a fact that it's not because I've moved some wires around, and rather than just guess, and I don't know what other people have done, I've actually gotten the original wiring diagram and I'm just going to trace through it, checking that each cable is good and then making sure that it's going from the right place to the right place. So I was going to use this jumper cable to allow the club cart, which is fully charged up, to power the Yamaha cart so I could test out and see if the rest of the system was working if I bypassed the solenoid. But if you look here, I have the leads hooked up to the jumper cables and we're reading infinite resistance. If I wiggle this wire around, sometimes it will get better, but not usually. So basically, if I actually touch these together, you'll see it goes down to a nice low voltage, but the cables are definitely not working. If we look here, we can see there's not very much wire in there. There's no way that's going to carry the load to start a car. And so this is a pretty ridiculous jumper cable. This thing is complete garbage and should just be, I don't know, we can't throw it in the trash because we don't have trash here, but it should definitely not be used to start any cars. If we look at the other end here, you can see the wires are sticking out. I don't know if it's showing up on the camera, but there's actually, it looks like there is some arcing when somebody maybe did try to use this once. Well, I'm not feeling as optimistic about the golf cart. Originally, I thought it was the D2 model, which has a very simple mechanical speed control system. And this cart is the G9 model, which has a fancier digital speed controller. And signs right now are pointing to the speed controllers being bad. I can buy a replacement one, but it's $400. And then I also need a new solenoid and maybe a new battery. So now we're talking about $560 to get that thing up and running again. So we have to weigh that against what would it cost just to buy an entirely new one that already works. There are some more experimental things I can try there. It is still possible that maybe it's something simple that's wrong, like rather than the speed controller being wrong, maybe it's just the system that sends the speed information from the gas pedal to the controller is broken, and this is just a simple resistor system. It might also be possible to bypass the speed controller entirely, which means there's only two speeds, stopped and full speed. But doing that might have the advantage that we could evaluate then the rest of the cart and find out, if the rest of the cart handles beautifully, then maybe it's worthwhile to try to fix it. If we get it to go full speed and it's all janky and the steering's sloppy and the suspension's shot and stuff like that, then it might be a good reason to call it a total loss. So we'll see. I might end up working on some other stuff for a while, simply because it looks like this golf cart is going to be a protracted project, and I do have a lot of other things to focus on.